it's not the titanium weight. I've got control over that. I'll talk about the difference there in a minute. So I'm gonna in a little under 90 minutes, I'm gonna try and go through the fantastic range of materials that Golden. So first one, anyone know why it's called Golden?
The surname.
Right. Okay. I think staff should be excluded from this. But seeing I hadn't made that clear, there we go. That you get a free sample. Yes, I did have a workshop in Wellington, and half the class that turned up thought we were going to do gilding. It was gold. So no, Sam Golden is who it's named out of. So I'll just give you a very quick rundown of the history of the company, because Sam Golden is part of the history of the development of artists' acrylics in the world. So he worked for his uncle Beaucourt, who made Beaucourt acrylics, which were one of the first acrylics, 1940s. He was working for his uncle in New York, developing those. The first one was actually a spirit-based acrylic. It took a little while for the technology to catch up and make a plastic, make this oily stuff, water compatible, which they managed in the 40s. Sam Golden was instrumental with the development of materials to help the New York artists develop their particular style. So what we think of as artists paint, they call heavy body. So it's a tube colour, right? So a tube colour has the structure to it, and the heavy body paints here are very smooth, but have this nice surface structure to them. I'm just going to show you brush lines. If you're wanting to paint, does anyone paint with a palette knife here? Sometimes. Oh, I've got some tricks for you coming up shortly. The actual swatch of colour, so you can see what colour it is. Anthraquinone blue. Why the heck do they use some of these names, right? Anthraquinone.
What is it?
Anthraquinone blue is in other ranges is called Delft blue, because Delft for the pottery, right? That beautiful blue. Acrylic acrylic manufacturers tend to call things by their chemical name because they're modern and they're up to date with the technology. Whereas oil paints and watercolor paints tend to use more traditional. So Delft, where the color came from, it's got more of a romantic kind of thing which goes with the old-fashioned paints, right? So the name. When you see either on the front or on the back of a tube a series of letters and numbers starting with the letter P. This is pigmentation. So all pigments in the world start with the letter P. Different from other colorants. So we also have dyes, alcohol inks, food colorings, that sort of thing. They tend to fade very quickly. They're not very strong. Pigments are actually solid particles of color. So P, this being a blue, after pigment is B for blue. So if it was green, any idea what would come after the P? G. Exactly. So you get a free prize. See, this is how easy getting free prizes are. Can you pass it back? So yeah, G would be G. And then there's an international colour index where PB60 is this particular blue, which is a lovely blue. It's a warm blue, but it's not like ultramarine, right? It's a little more subdued, a little bit more serious than ultramarine. When you see that it's only got that one pigment, it's what they call a single pigment colour. So the colour is the purest colour you can get. I learned today actually Michelle's a great reader of tubes, so if you need any more information on this, talk to Michelle. This one here is very straight up, it says mixture. So it's a mixture of pigments to make this particular azo gold colour. You go to the reverse and it says pigments, PR 101, pigment red 101, with PY 150, pigment yellow 150. So it's a mixture of two pigments. So if you go, I really like that colour, I've already got PR 101, that's a burnt sienna. So I'll just buy that yellow. I'll go and find the tube which says PY 150 on it. Now I can mix my own, but I can make it more yellow or more red depending on how much of which one I put in. So if you're starting out and you're going, expensive colours, I'm just going to start out a little bit. If you look for the single pigment colours, you're always going to have the cleanest mix, because also the more pigments you combine, it can get a bit dirty if you start adding more than 4 pigments together. So that's why the single pigment is so necessary. Let's just not get bogged down. Let's quickly move this through to fluids. So the structured paint, the heavy body paint comes in a tube, and it's kind of what we think of as paint. But in actual fact, acrylic in its original form is a liquid. So this is a fluid acrylic. Fluid acrylics aren't, they're not dilutions of the structured paint. So the structured paint here, it's very, very concentrated, but the structure in it is because they have to get a fluid colour, which is what the acrylic originally is, and they add plastic solids to it so that it makes it into a structure. The fluid colour is more of a creamy consistency. So if you're wanting to do really watercolour-y kind of effects, well, you can see how strong this is. There we go. Oh, not even. Let's go on to the next board. So you can see how really concentrated this is. For me to start getting watercolour effects, I'm going to have to add a lot of water. There we go. To get that kind of transparency. Let's add a little bit more colour. Does anyone use the fluids? Mm-hmm. Yep, a few people. So to get these nice kind of bleedy, blossomy, loose watercolour effects, but in a very strong and concentrated kind of way. So here's that colour in full strength down there. Because of course if we try diluting the structured paint, the heavy body, down to this kind of consistency, we're going to dilute down the colour strength. So we're going to dilute down the colour strength and the adhesive quality. So this is the heavy body diluted down to a liquid. So we've lost the colour strength there. This is the fluid, it just comes straight out of the pot at that colour strength. Same colour. So that's the concentrated. If you're wanting to really thin your colour down, the fluids are an incredible way to do it. They also tend to be the most versatile kind of colour. We're going to go into that in a minute. A structured paint was developed along with fixed point perspective in the Renaissance, because you had a bit of colour and it's going there and it's staying there. That's where it goes. Fixed point perspective was developed not to show reality, but to show a person's place in the world. And oil paint was developed, structured paint was developed to place that person there and make sure that's where they stay. So there's a control thing going on there. Fast forward to the 20th century and people started to wake up to the fact that that was you and me. That was white guys telling everyone what to do. So there was this, wasn't you and me, it's just, we're lumped into that. Not all men, but a lot of men, right? There was the suffragette movement. So all of a sudden, half the population was saying, "Hey, we've got a voice as well." So women, different ethnicities, different religions, different sexualities, all of these different viewpoints made society more fluid, right? And that's where artists started going, well, I don't want a paint that goes where I tell it to, but I'm showing you where that's going. I want a paint that's going to mix in with other colours and bleed and blossom and do things which I'm not really sure what's going to happen. There's going to be an element of surprise when I'm making paint, making a picture, which could give rise to nice little areas of je ne sais quoi in there. So the rise of the fluids kind of came with that rise of fluidity, more of a fluidity in society. Best way to show this next paint actually is to do a little. Anyone here use jelly plates? Yeah, aren't they amazing?
Very addictive.
Very addictive. When they first came on the scene, and I was asked to try these out. So it's a medical grade silicone, so it's a very strong silicone. This one here is 2017, so how long ago is that? 7 years ago, so it's 7 years old. And I'm going to put that down on a non-permeable background, so just using this file thing here. Put down some paper onto it. I'm going to hinge one sheet of paper down one side. It might sound like I've gone off on a little track here with like jelly plates. What's he talking about? I thought this was golden. Jelly plates actually are made in New York State as well. Couldn't get them during COVID because of they were busy making all the PPE gear, but we can get them now. So I've just hinged a couple of bits of paper like that, so they flap over the jelly plate. I'm going to put some of this next paint out, which is called Open Acrylic. Anyone use Open? Do you use it with your jellies?
I just use whatever I've got at home.
Do you want
this is why I've come here.
Right.
See what else.
Amazing. So Open Acrylic, as the name suggests, stays open for a very long time.
Yeah, they dry incredibly quickly.
No, incredibly slowly.
Yeah, no, but the ones I have.
Oh, right,
because
right.
they're cheap.
Was that cheap? Oh, look, here
Yeah,
we go,
no,
here we go.
Oh,
So you don't even have to answer anything really.
lovely, thank you.
So normal acrylic will dry in 2 to 5 minutes, depending on film thickness and the atmosphere, right? In fact, you know, that's well dry there. Even those thicker areas are still a bit tacky, that's still wet. That thicker bit there's pretty much tacked down. I can come back tomorrow and I can still use those open.
Oh,
They don't skin, so it doesn't skin like a normal acrylic. They will stay wet, mounted up on a pallet for weeks. No need to put them in the fridge or anything like that. And when I'm working with them, I've got about an hour and a half's working time on my canvas. So think, you know, big blended skies and that sort of thing. I've got a good hour and a half to work with them before they start to tack up.
Can you mix them with the other?
And you can. The wonderful thing about all of these is they're all intermixable. So I do have a few colleagues who find that the open's a bit too slow, and they're like, I don't want to be an hour and a half still waiting for it to dry. I want to do the next layer. You can mix it in with a standard heavy body or with a fluid or what have you, and the two drying times kind of meet. So if you've got one at 5 minutes and one at an hour, a 50-50 mix means you've got about half an hour of working time. Or you can use a gel to do the same thing. We'll talk about gels shortly. The good thing about the open with the jelly plate is that because it's going to take so long to dry, I can use it as a block printing ink. So here I'm just onto the jelly plate with some of the open acrylic, and I can play around, and that's not going to dry for a while. So I could either trace an image through the jelly plate, or I can pop paint down on there, and I can flip over one of the sheets, little barren here, just for some hand pressure, and I get a really good take of ink. Every little brush mark comes out, and there's enough ink on there for me to do another press. I'm just going to press a little bit harder this time to get that remaining paint off, but I'll get a gentler one. So I've got 2 prints there, and I can go back on and go, okay, well, it needs a bit more blue in there, so let's put in some blue. So this is a lot more liquid. We can see the fluid is slumping one way with gravity, but it's not really flowing, whereas this is really an ink. So very, very fluid. So dip pens, things like that, but my favourite is using them in that one, in empty paint markers. So I just take the collar off, take the coloured insert, fill it about. You can mix your own colours. If I didn't want it to be ultramarine, I could put a little bit of magenta or something in there if I wanted. Use the lid, it's back in there. Pop that in. Pump the nib to get the colour to come down. And then I've got a drawing implement which is actually going to give me acrylic paint, right? Which is, for me, is pretty exciting. Well, when these first came out in 12 years ago or so, it was really exciting because all of a sudden I had paint, but I didn't have to refill my brush or reload my brush every time. So any sort of repetitive mark making, so little lines or dots, anything where a brush I would have to continually reload, or the exploratory Paul Clay, he said, drawing is taking a line for a walk. So the exploratory nature of drawing, but now I've got it in a paint form. I can go over. Here's my big one.
And that dries quite quickly as well, does it?
It dries quickly, yeah. The printmaking paper is a bit sucky for the pen. You can get very big ones like this, which so it goes down over the canvas nicely. So marker pens. We used to associate marker pens with little grommets who'd come and tag your fence under the cover of darkness, right?
I'm assuming you can leave the paint
Yes.
in the pen. You don't
And you leave the paint from the pen. You can leave it in there for a good year and it won't dry up. Store them on their side with the caps on. So you've got this, really drawing kind of freedom. Obviously, the wet paint there is not going to be great on my nib, but you've got this great drawing freedom. But at the same time you're putting out acrylic paint. So the liquid colours are good for that. They're good for dropping into wet paint, wet surfaces and getting it all to bleed and blossom as well. Super matte. Now we're going to talk a little bit later about matte surfaces. But matte does change things, right? So there's a split ground here. So there's a dark grey underneath and a white on the lower half. We have a straight ultramarine here. Ultramarine is transparent, so we can see through the ultramarine to the split ground. Here's the so flat. The so flat is very opaque and matte. Matte, if you matte something, you make it lighter and you make it more opaque because light hits the surface and scatters, whereas transparent tend to be glossy. Transparent colours tend to be glossy because if you think of a transparent surface like glass, like water, we can see through these, but we get that reflection off the surface too, right? So we can see through it, but it lightens it. So the colours are slightly different. I like to kind of mix up my painting. I like areas of really soft matte stillness along with more lively areas.
And can you varnish that?
So it's interesting because humans measuring everything, right? There is a unit of gloss called a GU, and in actual fact, 100 GU, 100 gloss units, is a black shiny glass. So that's 100, perfectly reflective. Whereas 0 is graphene or something like that. Most of the golden acrylics go from about 92 GU, so the phthalo colours are the shiniest, and they're very transparent, down to the earth colours, which are about 12 GU. The so flat colours are like 4, they're between 4 and 6, so they're almost dead flat. So when it comes to varnishing them, the mattest varnish that you can get is not as matte as the So Flat colours. So varnishing them is a little tricky. You can use a matte varnish. They're quite scuff proof. This has been kicking around in my suitcase and in and out and around classes and up and down the country for 6 years or so, and so it's got a few marks on it, but it's not too bad. I'll pass this one around because this has got an interesting thing on it. This is the So Flat. I've just used some gloss medium over the top, and it brings back the depth of colour in there, but you can also see how scuffed it is. So a matte varnish will stop it getting so scuffed, but will raise the gloss of it. It won't make it glossy because it'll be a matte, but it won't be as matte, right? I was just having a talk with Audrey and Michelle in the shop about removable varnish, because if the varnish isn't removable, it's not a varnish, right? Because to clean a painting, you have your painting, the beautiful painting, and you gave it to your grandkids, and because they value you, they've hung it above the stove, and 50 years' time it's had baked bean splashes and all the other stuff over the top of it. If it's been varnished, and I've taken a 100-year varnish off a painting, you take the varnish off and all of that atmospheric dirt comes off with the varnish, and it leaves behind a beautiful, pristine painting if it's been done with light fast colours. And you can put another protective varnish over the top of it, so you do need to be able to remove it. And acrylic paints especially, when they dry, they form these pores in the surface, so air can actually get down right into the base of the acrylic and dry it out, right? So you can make an acrylic painting that thick and it will dry all the way through. Oil paint, that won't happen. Oil paint skins and then it won't dry any further. But because it lets air right down into the paint film through these pores, acrylic paint breathes. So if you have a clear gel or a transparent paint even, on a dry day like this, the paint dries. But then when we have a really humid day, the humidity goes back into the paint film, the water goes back into the paint film, and your clear gel might go a bit cloudy. It's because that's the humidity in the paint. Then a clear day comes along and the water leaves the paint film. But as well as the humidity going into your paint and out and out, dirt, exactly. So gloss varnish gives you greatest clarity. Matte doesn't give you that glare, but you do have to be careful. Like this, I had someone ring up with a problem with a varnish that they'd varnished their painting, which had a lot of blacks in it, varnished it with a matte varnish, and it had gone kind of charcoal because it had lightened it. And I said, well, that's what matte does. Matte lightens the colour, gloss deepens the colour. So it's easy. All you need to do is put a gloss varnish over the top and all of your deep blacks will come back. No, but I want it matte. It's like, well, it's going to go lighter. No, I want it darker. Well, we've managed to find a compromise, but
Setting.
So there's three, right? Gloss gives you greatest depth, and in actual fact, it's a good segue to go into mediums, because I do want to. It's 40 minutes. That's all right. They say if we're not going to make a student range, if you want a cheaper colour, you get a pot of the colour and you buy one of our gels and you make your own paint that way. It's called an extension. So when you're extending an acrylic paint, you're not diluting the adhesive or colour, the adhesive strength of the film. You're just extending the colour. This is a really good little example. Full strength, so 100% paint out of the tube, right? 1-to-1 with a clear gel. If anything, it's stronger, right? That colour, this seems a little flatter than that, because some colours like to be opened up a little bit. Just lets a bit of light into the film. 1 part colour, 5 parts clear gel. So still really strong colour, but you can start to see the pencil line underneath, which is underneath all of these. 1 part colour, 10 parts gel. So still really good colour strength. I've made it more transparent because I've opened up that pigment more, but the film layer is still really, really strong. When I went to Golden in 2009, in actual fact, the way they couched it was we pick our colour and then we can pick the viscosity we want of our paint. And that to me was a bit of an aha, because it's like, well, yeah, I thought you had like 5 different paints, 3 of which have a different viscosity, but they're like, yeah, but we've got 54 different types of mediums, so what do you like? If you like the viscosity of what comes out of the tube, you know, you like that nice structured paint, we have a regular gel. It's going to be in here somewhere. Regular gel. So regular gel is exactly the same texture as the paint. It's white. Unfortunately, acrylic mediums are white. This is because the refractive index of water and acrylic resin is the same. So until the water leaves the film, it'll look like I've added a bit of white into my paint. It's a bit of a pain, but you get used to it. So now I've got paint which has got exactly the same structure as it came out of the tube. And once the water leaves that, the whiteness is going to go, and I'm going to have that strong azo orange colour out of it. The gel that I find is the best. They do 4 different gels with 3 different consistencies. Sorry, sheens. So all of these gels come in a gloss for clarity, a matte for a nice kind of waxy kind of look, and a semi gloss. If you can't make up your mind, just get the semi gloss. Personally, I like to get, if I'm layering up, I like to get greater clarity, so I'll use the gloss to layer up, and if I want to adjust the sheen at the end, I'll do that. But my favourite is the one that I have the big bucket of, because you can, I mean, the bigger quantity that you buy, the cheaper the quantity gets, right? So soft gel gloss. Let's write these down. I know I'd have to get that. So there are 4 gels. Soft gel, which comes in a gloss, semi-gloss, and a matte. So the gloss is the one that I use. Soft gel is called soft gel because it's got a soft consistency, like a heavy moisturising cream or something, but any peaks that we get soften, so you won't get any sharp peaks. So even if I lift it with my blade, they're all softening off, right? And this is really necessary for this tricky thing that I want to show you. This is the perfect collage adhesive. So what are we going to glue down? What have I got that I can glue down? I do a lot of fabric collage on my canvases, and you know, I was at Sydney Contemporary. I had a big show there a couple of weeks ago, and I had several people going, yeah, but is that all going to fall off? It's like, no, it's really mounted down. Soft gel gloss is superior because it's an acrylic. So it's flexible, it's water resistant, it's non-yellowing, it's an acrylic, so I can paint over the top of it with acrylics or oils, and it's soft, so it brushes out nice and easily. If you're wanting to mount canvas or watercolour paper down on board, this is how you do it. You put on a layer.
Can you use it as a topping coat when you've finished your work?
For what? It's not removable because it's acrylic.
Yeah, instead of varnishing it.
No, because a varnish, you want to be able to remove a varnish so you can remove all of that dirt.
can't
You
do
do
that.
use this as what's called an isolation coat, which sits in between your painting and the varnish, so that when someone takes off the varnish, they're not working directly on your painting. So that's another use for it. Get a layer on it so that you can see it, so you can see how white it is there, but it's not troweled on, but it's not too thin as well. Then your paper or your artwork, let's use this beautiful bit of art, needs to be a little bit bigger than the baseboard, so that when you pop that down, there should be a few millimeters. Seeing we're winging this, there should be a little bit more than that poking out the side. Because you pop that down like that, you can use a roller to put that down, or if you don't have a roller, you can just use I've got a friend who does really big watercolour mounted down onto board, and he uses like 10 socks stuffed inside each other, so he has this big ball that he can do that with. But just to roll that down, then you put a nice heavy board on top of it, you weight it down with a whole stack of books or whatever have you, like that, and you leave it overnight. Now, there's two ways of doing things. There's the proper process way of doing things, which is leave it overnight. Then there's the way that artists do it. It's like, that's long enough. That'll do. It's the fast way, right? You could leave it half a day, but overnight's kind of necessary. So here's one that I prepared earlier, so you can see that the paper is just a little bit over the board. We want that because any excess soft gel gloss that splurges out the side is caught under that ledge. It hasn't gone on top of my artwork there. And then it's very easy. You just get a knife. Now it's the soft gel gloss, not the soft gel matte. So the matte has got matting agents in it, so it's not quite so smooth as the gloss. That's why you don't do it standing up. You put it down on the ground. There you go. So nice and square and stuck right down. The matte has got matting agents, so it doesn't press out as smoothly as the soft gel gloss. The regular gel, which was the gel which has the same structure as the tube paint, again, it's got too much structure, so you end up with a bit of a lumpy surface. This one's perfect. The other thing that this one's perfect for, my lovely little painting. Right, so if I've got something very textural that I want to, look at this, I've got something perfect here. Some fabric. Nice, well, you can count the thread count on that, eh? That's really nice Egyptian cotton. Never throw out your sheets. So if you're wanting to glue that down, what I tend to do is gel on the surface where it's going down. So again, enough that I can see it, right? Then that goes down onto it, and the gloss goes over the top of that as well. Right, so any wrinkling in the paper and that is going to be pressed down into it, because I've got moisture coming from up from beneath and down from the top.
What about thin papers?
Yeah, thin papers will go down really nice and evenly here. So, so I can really layer this up. And the more I'm putting on, the paint's not quite dry there, but that's all right. Because you can think of gels as acrylic paint with no colour. That's a really easy way of thinking of a gel. So that now, when that dries, is really going to be encapsulated in an acrylic. And once that's dry, because it's an acrylic, I can paint over the top with my normal acrylics. I can use a pen, I can use whatever I want over the top of that. The soft gel gloss is an amazing collage paint adhesive gel. They do a regular gel, so the regular gel is the same as tube colour, same as heavy body. They do a heavy gel, but why would you use the heavy gel if they do an extra heavy gel. Because you don't mess with mistakes between, you just go straight to the really, really heavy, thick, viscous stuff. So this extra heavy gel
It still looks like
is sculptural, right? So you can kind of really sculpt with it, and it's going to dry like that. You know, it's incredibly sculptural.
What's the drying time?
It's kind of overnight, but it depends on the time of year. So I did a painting class, luckily a 2-day class with, and told everyone it'd be dry overnight. And we came in the next morning, and there was no way it was dry. It was still a bit soft, so that took more like 48 hours. I'm just going to upend all of this onto there, just cause. So if you want a really easy way of doing thick painting without using a whole heap of paint, because paint's the expensive bit, the colour is the expensive bit. I mean, this is a pure acrylic resin, but it's cheaper if it's got no colour in it. So what you can do is you can spread on a nice thick layer of gel, of extra heavy gel, like this.
That would be
Like
good
it's a
for-
cake,
Yeah.
like icing. GAC, GAC, and there'll be GAC 100, GAC 200, GAC 400, so on and so on. And these always puzzled me, so when I went to Golden, I was like, what is GAC? Well, it's Golden Artist Colours. Like, oh, okay. What do these numbers mean then? Oh, they're kind of arbitrary. Oh, okay, this is no fun at all. Okay, so what is a GAC? I think there's 400, there's a 700, there's an 800 and a 900. And they said, well, the easiest way to think of these GACs are they are pure acrylic resins, each with a specific property. It's like, right, okay, that's easy to get my head around. So the GAC 100 is a pure acrylic resin, and the specific property of that is it seals, so that nothing can get through it. So if you're sealing wood, so here's a wood panel, this is the straight panel there, then there's the GAC 100, which is clear, glossy. It's stopping any impurities coming out of the wood, because this is a laminate wood, so there's not only the lignins in the wood, the acidic compounds that are naturally in wood, but there's glues as well, for maybe formaldehydes, if it was a chipboard, that sort of thing, which by putting a wet gesso in will water solubilize these, and then with the evaporation process drag those components into my paint layer, which I'm not wanting. So this GAC 100 seals it, preventing anything from coming out of the wood or any of my paint soaking into the wood. So if I'm painting in oils, for instance, it's a good idea to seal the GAC 100. GAC 200. GAC 200 is a pure acrylic resin, and its specific property is it sticks like the proverbial to any surface. It's an adhesive. So if I'm wanting to paint up this diabond, the sign panel, which is aluminium with a PE centre, or any metal, glass, perspex, anything like that, the GAC 200 is going to stick to that. It's not going to come off, not going to be able to be scratched off, and then I can just gesso or paint over the top of the 200. So pure acrylic resins, each with a specific property, and these are listed in that little booklet that I've given you. So sealer, adhesive, the 400 is not sure. Oh, it stiffens fabric maybe. 800 is a fabric additive. Maybe it's the 900. You'll have to look it up. I'm not sure.
900.
Right. So
900.
900 is the
That's the fabric.
right. Is it? Let's give you a tube of ultramarine blue there. Yeah.
Reading the book.
You watch. Oh, you're going to pass it. Yeah. Right. Thing. Right. So just quickly on primers. And I do have some here. Because we are fooled a little bit into thinking when we come into a store and we read the description on a paint on a canvas, and it says pre-primed with acrylic gesso, triple primed. In fact, with acrylic. Oh yeah, that sounds good. They're not lying, but they're not telling kind of the full truth. It's been triple primed, but it's been sprayed on. So it hasn't been brushed on. So 3 coats with the spray guns, like 1 with a brush, right? So factory primed gessos are okay, but the easiest way to improve your painting is to put some additional coats of gesso over the top. You can even see the difference in colour there, right? So this has got 2 more coats of the golden gesso. This is the factory prime. It looks quite grey because they're not spending the money on a really highly titanium white gesso. The other thing that it's done is it's filled the weave. So when you go to paint and you get all the white spots because the paint's not going into the weave, again, it's because it hasn't been prepared properly. And I was with you. It's like, who wants to do that? That's why I'm buying a pre-prepared canvas, right? I just want to get into the painting. Yeah, but when it comes to doing your house, you sand it, you scrape it, you sand it, you prime it, then you paint it. If you ding your car, you take it into the panel beaters and they don't just go, there you go, and take it away again. They've got to sand it, they've got to prime it, and they've got to... So the priming is really important when you're painting on a canvas. Because my paint isn't having to fill the weave here, it's going on nice and smoothly. I'm getting really nice bright colours. You can even hear the change in colours. It's scratchy, and then it's nice and smooth on there. And here I am having to. You can even see there's a bit of a change in colour. There you can see kind of that line where this is always going to be darker because it's not got the same reflective quality as that there. So you can easily improve the quality. They have done the hardest bit of it. The initial priming from raw fabric to the first couple of coats of gesso is the most difficult, but you can improve it no end just by... And it's a nice way of getting to know the surface. Like, it's white on white. You can't actually mess it up. So it's just like, hi, I'm Evan, your canvas, and we're getting to know each other. Put on the gesso, and you start looking and going, is that enough gesso? How do you put it on? Do you put it on in even strokes with the fabric, or do you do the 19th century way of crisscrossing the gesso? But the most amazing thing when I went to Golden, because at the time, 2009, I was just an oil painter. I hadn't seen the light. And they ribbed me a little bit. They're like, oh, you're an oil painter, aren't you? Because we just do acrylics. And I suppose you get your gesso and you get your canvas and you gesso it up and then you paint on it. It's like, yeah, that's what painters do. Right? And they're like, well, that's what oil painters have to do. Acrylic painters can use gesso, but it's a bit old hat. We actually have the opportunity to ask ourselves, what sort of surface do I want? Do I want a smooth surface, a rough surface, an absorbent surface, a non-absorbent surface, a hard surface, a soft surface? And they have different pastes. So they had these different pastes, and they said the pastes you put down as a substrate to work on. So this is moulding paste. It's a very hard, non-absorbent, smooth surface, which is really good for any subtractive techniques where you're putting paint on, but then you're wanting to take paint off again. And especially with the open acrylics, which are going to stay open for longer, you can kind of work back into it, then paint back onto it, and you've got this kind of ready-made surface. So again, there's one that I've done earlier for textures. So you can add this underlying texture. That's actually oil paint on there. So they were like, well, you're an oil painter. Here's one that you can use For the light moulding paste, it's totally different. It's soft. My fingernail will go into it. It's rough and it's absorbent. So it's kind of the opposite. So the good thing there is that I can treat it quite differently. They're going to look at me strangely at dinner tonight, aren't they? So here I'm just going to put some water down first. Mucky water, but you know, proper practice on what an artist will do. Can I be bothered changing it? No. And then some nice colour in there, and get the colour to blossom and bleed. So the light moulding paste is really well suited to these more fluid colours. So because it's absorbent, so the colour is absorbing in reasonably fast. I've got this beautiful kind of texture. So you put your fingernail in, you can see that it kind of bounces into it. It's got a bit of. Here's one that was put on, so not so smoothly, and then painted over. So it's been put on with a like a stucco knife, and then painted on.
So this goes just straight onto unprepared.
Yeah, you can put it straight onto unprepared or a pre-primed, but you're adding the surface to it, so it doesn't really matter what it's going on to. You know, you can put it onto wood, onto metal, onto. That's the light moulding paste. Yeah. Light moulding paste. So moulding paste is made out of marble, powdered marble, so it gives you that marble kind of finish. Soft moulding paste, light moulding paste is made out of hollow ceramic spheres. What industry do you think you get hollow ceramic spheres of that kind of size? Minuscule size. There's a prize.
Ceramic.
Yes, the hollow ceramic spheres. What do you think they'd be using those for? Apart from that. Yes, the space shuttle. So all the tiles are made with hollow ceramic spheres because they're light, they're heat resistant, and
That's wet.
yeah, that one's wet. So no more space shuttle, but light moulding paste. Now, light moulding paste, when they were doing the test, each big batch of the stuff at Golden gets, before it gets packaged into smaller pots, gets laid out overnight so they can see if there's anything wrong with the batch. One day the scientists, the chemists there came out onto the factory floor and went, the light moulding paste is cracked. We're going to have to find out what went wrong so we can stop this happening. The artists, there's always about a dozen artists at Golden, heard that something had happened down on the factory floor, so we went down and went, ooh, crackle paste. And the scientists, the chemists were like, we're going to find out what went wrong so we can make it wrong again. Hence it came up with crackle paste. So crackle paste is a light moulding paste that as it dries, it cracks them up. So here's a coarse moulding paste. You can colour up the pastes to make an instant kind of coloured ground by mixing no more than 30% paint into your paste, and that will give it a nice colour. The pastes can be used for a lot of different things. We have here we've got a micaceous iron oxide, very nice for coloured pencil and pastel and things, because you've got just a nice bit of tooth to catch it, but also you've got this kind of instant surface. Here is one of the more unusual grounds is called Silver Point ground. Now I know you sell a couple a year here, I think. Silver Point ground you paint on. It's pretty thin. It's like a milk. Paint it on, but then with a silver spoon, or if you can't find a silver spoon, you can actually get silver points, and it leaves a trail of silver behind. It doesn't smudge. It's not graphite. In fact, all of Da Vinci's drawings, that was before graphite was discovered and used as a drawing material. So he was using silver point. Silver point. What happens to silver over time?
Tarnish.
Yeah, it tarnishes. So this will go from a grey graphite. He's already started turning a little bit bronzy. It goes really bronze, so it's quite nice way of drawing.
Yeah.
And you have an exact kind of line as well. The line doesn't fatten out with pencil mark. So silver point, black gesso. They do a black gesso. Black gesso, of course, transparent colours don't tend to work very well on black
No.
because you can see the black through, so you need to use opaque colours. The flip-flop colours, the interference colours, work very well on black, but you don't get so much of the flip-flop. You get just the straight pearlescent colour. And one that is, if you're using lots of inks, this is a particularly good one, absorbent ground. Do you use that? Because if you're using a very liquid colour, most canvases are primed with two non-absorbent a gesso, and if you're painting with them, they'll just let's pick up enough. They'll kind of dribble down. Let's get some more water on there.
Is it good for Indian ink or something?
Yeah, this has the same absorbency as paper. So we can put really, really thin ones down, and you get this lovely bleeding that you'll get in paper, but it doesn't do this.
You
And
can
you
use it with watercolour too, can't you?
Watercolours tend to go a bit dusty on it. They or a little it desaturates the watercolour. There's a better one if you're wanting to use watercolour on canvas. You can get also done by Golden called Core QOR watercolour grounds. They do 3 different types of watercolour ground. If you want to do watercolour, but this has got very much. You can hear it's quite a dry, very very absorbent, like paper, and you don't get this very scratchy kind of uniform. You tend to get much more of a paper surface, but on canvas. So the absorbent ground is very good for that. Like everything, if you're using something new, I love using this kind of size little panel, just these little cheap $1.70 panels, scraps of stuff lying around, because you are wanting to experiment. There are a number of artists who will go, oh, I went to this thing and that looked good, so I'm going to use it on my masterpiece, which is due at the art awards tomorrow, and it all goes wrong, and then they blame me. It's like you do need to experiment around and play around and get used to it before you go, right, I'm going to prime up a big surface with that moulding paste because I know how it kind of is going to look now. All right, let's have a look. Oh, got some. You haven't got anything yet, have you? There we are. You have.
I got the yellow one.
You did. You got the yellow one.